Namaskar and good evening to all of you. Shall we start?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Fine. So, again, the whole semester the subject is the science of yoga. So, I'm going to look at it from another angle. Okay, yesterday we discussed that the teacher of Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, could barely, he was quite unlettered in the sense of the formal sense of the term. He didn't attend school, he didn't go to college. But he went through several deep spiritual experiences, you can call them yogic experiences, from which he came out a person of great wisdom, to listen to whom and to answer their own questions. People from the intellectual, elite of Bengal used to go and sit with him. Now the question is, where is the source of this wisdom that has come to him? The yogis say that the source of the wisdom that this man had, and which of course, if he had, is available to all of us, provided we know how to get there, came from his being able to touch the innermost core of his being or his consciousness. Now, if you go back to the history of yoga, the earliest symbol of a yogi is found as early as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. One of the images found is of a person sitting cross-legged and meditating. Even most of the writings have not been deciphered yet, but then it goes back very early. If you come to the Itihasas and the Hindu system of thought and the Hindu pantheon, gods, it's interesting to note that according to the Hindu pantheon, there are crores of gods, which means every power in nature is a god. It doesn't have to have a special god to worship, which is wonderful. But among these, one of the notable images that you see is of a being called Shiva. And if you see any of the picture, of course nobody saw Shiva, the pictures drawn by artists, depending on the descriptions given in Shiva Samhita and other texts, is of a yogi sitting cross-legged in Padmasana, meditating in the Himalayas somewhere, in Kailash or whatever, on a snow-clad peak, steady with his eyes closed, and yet there is a small eye that is shown, that is opening in the forehead. And there's a snake wound around his head. And a small Chandrakala on the head, which is also the symbol of Durga. Now this particular deity is called the Maha Yogi in the Hindu system of thought and in philosophy, which means a divine representation of a yogi meditating. So the question usually asked, if he is a divine being, who is he meditating upon? I'm divine, so why would I meditate? What am I meditating upon? The answer is that Shiva is a symbol of the meditating yogi. In his ultimate sense, Shivam means the Supreme Being. There is nothing to find. But to represent a yogi to us who are seeing this image, the image of a yogi meditating has been put up. Now, so if the yogi is meditating and if his both eyes are closed and one eye is open here, now this in yogic traditional circles has been referred to as the third eye. Jnana drishti, drishti through which wisdom is understood. The sight is instrument of perception through which one sees things which is beyond the capacity of the ordinary eyes to see. Now this takes us to an interesting subject which has been the subject of research by even as great a psychiatrist as Carl Jung. You must have heard of Carl Jung, Jung, because in German language J and Y are interchangeable. So Carl Jung, in fact, Carl Jung has done a lot of research on the yogic centers of attention, of concentration, and has lectured extensively in the West, in many universities, on the importance of the different centers which the yogis call chakras. Anyway, the point is, human beings, we generally use only 20% of our brain, which means only those parts of the brain which are used by us forms merely 20% of the total area of the brain. And in this 20%, we can understand philosophy, we can understand mathematics, we can write theses on quantum physics, everything. The question that the yogis ask, what about the rest? What does it do? Is it merely there like a block doing nothing? Which means it raises the next question. Are there unexplored centers in the human brain which, when explored and opened up, take us to dimensions which are beyond the ken of the five senses and this percentage of the brain which is active now? This is the question. And the yogis say that the yogi who practices different techniques and reaches the state of complete attention and dwells into the inner recesses of his own being, comes to that pure consciousness which can access, feel and see things which are not possible for the ordinary human being with his five senses to be able to comprehend. Now, this is, therefore, we need to look at this word called Samadhi, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the standard textbook on yoga. The first chapter is not on practice, how to practice, what to do. No. The first chapter is called Samadhi Pada, which means an exploration of consciousness, the aim for which the yogi is going to practice is sadhana, because the second chapter is Sadhana Pada. And in the history of this religious understanding and spiritual experiences, a great many people have sometimes stumbled upon this without proper training. And that has created problems too. Why? Because this is a vast subject. It needs proper guidance in a step-by-step way so that the mind and the body is prepared to experience the shock of suddenly seeing something infinite. It's like trying to, as I said yesterday, trying to study electricity by holding the high tension lines in your hand. Can't be done. You'll be burned down. So you need to go step by step. You need to study how electricity works. What is it called? What is an insulator? How can you be insulated from this energy? And how do you tap this energy? how high voltage can totally throw all your fuses out of order, and so on and so forth. So why I'm saying this is because we are really dealing with something really, really true, which is really a scientific study, and which we need to go only with guidance. Just as in science, in your experiments, if you need to do a PhD, you need a guide. You can't just go into the lab and mess things up. More so in an atomic lab. You need a guide. So in the same way, therefore, the yogi believes that a guide is necessary at every step to take you from where you are to where you ought to be, or where you're going. So the first chapter discusses Samadhi. Samadhi meaning, what does Samadhi mean in yogic terms? Suppose I go into deep sleep. I wake up. I'm the same person. I might have relaxed, but I'm the same person who went to sleep, got up. There is no difference. But if it is a superconscious state, I'm using this word loosely. If Samadhi is a superconscious state, anyone who goes into it, a fool may go into Samadhi and come out a wise person. Why? Because he gets access to things which are beyond the ken of ordinary sense organs and the brain to understand. So we are trying through reason to figure out if there is something beyond reason. Of course, our only instrument we have is our mind, is reason, our logic and our rational, and so on and so forth. But when the yogis look deep into this, they find out, see, how does my, what you call rational mind, how does my logic work? How does it work? It works on the basis of the impressions gathered of the world around us and my body also, depending upon my instruments of perception, right? What are my instruments of perception? Sight, hearing, smell, taste and touch. These are the 5 indriyas, panchendriyas. In yogic terms, panchendriyas. Not even yogic terms, Sankhya terms. So these are the only 5 instruments available to us for perception. Well, the yogi says there is a 6th instrument. Let's keep it off for the time being. We don't know anything about it. 5 instruments of perception. Now these 5 instruments of perception give us an impression of something. And then the mind or brain, if you want to call it, processes it and comes out with a conclusion, this is this. Now can you imagine if any one or all of your instruments of perception are not perfect, suppose, and they are not perfect. How? Every day we see the sunrise. Every evening we see the sunset. But even in school you will understand, if you go even to high school, that the sun neither rises nor sets. But what do we see with our most important organ of perception, sight? That the sun is rising and the sun is setting. How much can you rely on the data provided by these imperfect senses? You can have the tastiest food kept before a person who has jaundice. No taste. It's not fault of the food. It's the fault of the sense organ. So, I hope you get what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that these sense organs are very limited in their scope. Well, we only have that, of course, I understand. And not only that, they could give you wrong information also. All the so-called optical illusions and so on that you see in school textbooks and so on, They are because of the wrong impression given to us by the sense organs. Yesterday we discussed about the compound eye of the fly and how it might see something quite different from what we see. So what is its actual shape? We don't know. We say based on my instruments of perception, this is what it is. No, but generally we don't want to say that. We say we are always correct and this is the right thing. Now, if this is so, and what we call our logical, rational blueprint, which each one has, is based upon the data gathered by these sometimes imperfect and at the worst even wrong impressions gathered by the sense organs. If that is so, how correct and complete can be my so-called rational blueprint? Now the yogi says, as long as you are dependent on your five senses, fine, no problem, you can accept it. But please understand that there are other sensory instruments of perception in the human body, human mind, which generally in most people are not active, and yoga is a way how to activate it. So, we have so many parts of the brain, especially the midbrain. You know that the master gland of the human system is the pituitary gland. It's the pituitary gland that controls most of the actions of our body and what chemicals are distributed in our system, everything. It's a master gland. Now, near the pituitary, there is also a small little gland called the pineal gland. Compared to the pituitary, it is even smaller. Now, the pineal gland, if you want to locate it, at some point we need to do some actual research on these matters physically. And you are the right people to initiate something. If you draw a line from so-called the third eye here, inside, and if you draw a line straight from the middle of your skull down, where the 2 points meet, just near the pituitary is the pineal gland. Now, what does the pineal gland do? Till a few years ago, they thought that the pineal gland is a completely useless organ, vestige organ, like the appendix, vermiform appendix, waste organ. Then they discovered that it has a major role to play. What is the role the pineal gland plays in our lives? It coordinates waking and sleeping. The neurologists called it the circadian rhythm. The pineal gland, tiny as it may be, contains a chemical known as melatonin. If you have a jet lag, probably the doctor will ask you to have a melatonin tablet. Melatonin is the hormone produced in the pineal gland, and under the right circumstances, when the lights are switched off and so on, little bit of melatonin is injected into the blood from the pineal gland. It's a ductless gland. Then you feel nice and comfortable and you don't want to get up and you go to sleep. Now, believe me, till 80 years or so, they thought it was a useless organ. Now, they think it's a useful organ. It controls your circadian rhythm. Go and do some reading on the circadian rhythm when you go home. We are saying that if the pineal gland is so important, and if it occurs somewhere in this area, deep inside of course, and if it controls such an important function in our system called sleep, you know that if you don't sleep for many days, you're going to go crazy. In fact, the maximum medicines I think sold these days, is to sleep. People can't sleep without popping a pill. You may not, you're young, you may be leading a carefree life, but there are lots of people who can't sleep without a tablet. Sleep is so important. Why? Because sleep rejuvenates your whole system. Why does it rejuvenate your system? Because it allows the unconscious mind to take charge of your body totally, instead of you trying to tamper with it. So according to the psychologists, there is a conscious mind and there is an unconscious mind. In between is a subconscious mind. The yogis say, no, there are four. There is the conscious mind, which we know, to some extent, of course, and the subconscious mind, which we don't know much about, and the unconscious mind, which takes over when you're asleep. The yogis say there's one more, the superconscious mind, not yet fully admitted by the psychologists and the psychiatrists. Now, why did I talk about this? Sleep. Sleep is so important. And according to the studies of the mind made by yogis and rishis, they say that sleep is very close to the superconscious state, although normally it is the unconscious state. It's very close to the superconscious state, so much so that in deep sleep, which in Vedantic and yogic terms is called sushupti, in deep sleep, if there was some mechanism by which you became aware, normally we are not aware. We are aware that we had a beautiful deep sleep when we wake up, not during the sleep. And sometimes you wake up after a deep sleep and it's so blissful sleep, you must be knowing this. Sleep is so blissful. I'm talking about a drugless sleep, okay? Deep sleep is so blissful that we don't want to wake up from it. Even in the morning, oh, there are exams, I have to study, I fix the alarm in my phone, it rings, I switch it off, I have 5 minutes. Again I switch it. Why? Because the mind is reluctant to come out of that deep, restful, blissful, unconscious state. Now the yogis say there is a superconscious state of existence which is similar to, suppose, you can't imagine this, but suppose. No, at the moment you can only imagine it, you cannot experience it. Suppose in that blissful deep sleep, one part of me which has cognition wakes up. How blissful would that conscious sleep be? And it is the reason why we want to sleep and not get up, however interesting the world may be. Now, this superconscious state, which is removed a little bit from the ordinary unconscious state, which is caused by the pineal gland and melatonin, a chemical process altogether. If we can touch that, say the yogis, you have touched the infinite universe. According to the yogis, that superconscious element in us, which is awareness, pure awareness, without any indulgence here or there. That pure awareness, there is only one pure awareness. It functions through different points, which are the different human minds. And when that is understood, everything is understood. This is what the yogis say. And that state in which the yogi meets or understands the state, or you can't even say experience it, touches the state, is called Samadhi. Normally when you say Samadhi, we're thinking of somebody died and they made a Samadhi. That's because it is believed that in death the soul goes back to its original state of superconsciousness. That's why they call that Samadhi. In fact, they call it Maha Samadhi, that means no more coming back. But the yogi can consciously go into Samadhi. Here, if this is possible for a human being to do, I would diverge a little and tell you something very interesting. I told you about Ramakrishna. Why I'm coming back to him again and again is because he didn't go to a great institution, or he didn't go to the IIT, he didn't go to Harvard, he went nowhere. He was just a village priest. And yet the wisdom was so deep. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, one of the most important people who headed the education movement in Bengal, used to come and sit before him to understand things. Now, when Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was taught a certain meditation practice by a yogi called Totapuri, suddenly he went into a trance state. When you say trance, T-R-A-N-C-E, meaning a state which is not in the waking state as we are now. And for 3 full days he was in that trance state. When he came back, he was a completely changed man. The one who went in was not the one who came out. I'm not saying this to differentiate him from us or for others. I'm saying if this is possible for one person, with proper research, proper understanding, proper practice, it is possible for everyone to touch that, at least to some extent, if not the whole. So one shouldn't get discouraged that, oh, that great being could do weak. No. This is because we have somehow been given the wrong impression that if you go into such matters, you will become otherworldly and you will lose interest in the world. Shall I tell you that Swami Vivekananda, who was his closest disciple, after having touched that state of superconscious, came down and did so much work which 100 people could not have done for 100 years, and did it with perfection. So this wrong impression that to study yoga, go into meditation, to understand the superconscious is running away from the world, or you cannot function in the world, is a wrong impression. I want to tell you that one can function in this world perhaps in a better way than you did if you had not touched that. I'm telling you from my own experience that many things which I could not have understood otherwise, I don't know everything, of course, I'm not omniscient, but I understand today because the mind has expanded through the practice of yoga. And here there is no caste, creed, young, old, there's nothing. It's, are you serious? Yes. If you are serious, are you ready to follow the practices? Yes. Then you will also come there. Well, depending on your particular circumstances of birth and so on, it may take longer or shorter period of time to touch it, but everybody has the core of consciousness in oneself and one can certainly touch it. This is the wonderful message of yoga, that we are not conditioned, puny little beings, but that we are in true essence sparks of an infinite, all-pervading, supreme consciousness. This is the message. That we are powerful, we are not weak. Anybody who wants to really go into the practice of yoga must shake off this feeling, I am weak, I cannot do. No. It's possible to do it because, so now I'm going to tell you another little story so that you'll get to know what we're talking about. When you say when I say the yogi goes into Samadhi, or when I say that the yogi touches the superconscious, he kind of goes beyond his ordinary logic. What is my ordinary logic? I'm a human being with only this much capacity. I cannot do more than that. I have been hypnotized into believing this for years. So the whole process of Samadhi is a de-hypnotization from this feeling that I am helpless, I am small, I cannot. Think big. Especially for you young people, it's very important to think big and say that your boundaries of knowledge are limitless. This is the meaning of the word jnana, wisdom. So I'll tell you a little story. I'm standing on the street and I see a man going in front of me who is very old, looks very weak, is carrying a bundle on his shoulder. Every step is an effort, trying hard to move, so weak. And then suddenly I see a car coming very close to him with the screeching of brakes and horns and so on, and stopping suddenly. Next minute, this man, who I thought was going to be hit by the car because he's so weak and he cannot move and every step is an effort, at that split second when the screeching of tires and brakes and horn, you look and the guy has disappeared. Where has he gone? He has cleared all long jump records and is on the other side of the road. How did he get there? You're wondering, how did this guy go there? You thought he was going to die the next minute, the way he was moving. How did he go there? We always think that thought is good, but in some situations, thought is bad. In this situation, the guy did not have time to think. He did not have time to think that I am weak, I cannot move. Because of the danger to his life, the limbic system which saves the human lives, also animal lives in the brain, took over. And the limbic system functions beyond your ordinary reasoning. If he had reasoned that I cannot jump, he would have died. But for fear, suddenly all thinking was suspended and something worked which was beyond his process, his thought process. And that is his inner being which was trying to save him. So, therefore the Upanishads declare that which is the ultimate truth is beyond your ordinary reasoning. Not because reasoning is bad. Because reasoning can be constructive, reasoning can also be destructive. All the world was that we had, is it because people didn't have reason? No, because they had supreme reason and they were destructive. On the other hand, when there is no interference of your ordinary logic, then there is some element in us which works, I wouldn't say through somebody's direction, but I would say in its own innate wisdom to give you what is best for you. To touch that is Samadhi. And that is the aim of yoga. Now, is it so drab to touch that? Shouldn't we enjoy your life? Yoga has nothing against your enjoying your life. Don't confuse yoga with sannyasa, please. These are two things. Some people take sannyas to understand yoga. But these are two words. There are yogis who have been living in this world. There are yogis who have also been renunciants. Why they are renunciants, some of them, which we'll explain. Now I'll come to this. We are looking at it from another point of view. If I practice yoga, am I going to be away from enjoying everything? Why would I do that? I am happy with my life. If you are happy with your life, fine, no problem. But please understand that life is just not over. There is much to learn in life. And perhaps there is something beyond the ordinary joys that we experience. Perhaps. So, every yogi, every practitioner of yoga has ultimately come to the understanding that there is a joy inside us when all the distractions of the mind are removed, which is how Patanjali defines yoga, chitta vritti nirodha. When all the distractions of the mind are removed and the mind becomes absolutely quiet, then the mind then enjoys the consciousness, pure consciousness, which is our inner being, the core of our being, which also is blissful. If it was not blissful, who would seek it? If it was pain, who would go towards it? So, and the yogis also say that every joy that you experience on this earth through your senses is 1% of that joy, which in essence is your being, the core of your being. That is why some people retire from the world, because they have found what they were seeking inside. So why would you look for it outside? That's why. Not the other way around. Now, in this matter, you have heard of Kabir Das, no? The weaver saint Kabir Das from Banaras. He said something very interesting. He said the human mind, the human being is like the musk deer. You know the musk deer? Kasturi mriga, it's called. It's a deer which has a pouch under his belly, which in a certain season exudes the fragrance of kasturi. Kasturi is created. What is kasturi? Musk, M-U-S-K. So in that season, there's a lovely fragrance in the air of the musk. And the poor deer, thinking that the fragrance is coming from somewhere outside, goes looking for it everywhere and not finding the source. Kabir said the source is inside. And all the joys of the world that you experience are small parts of the joy which is within. So, if you go to the core, how enjoyable would it be? So, we are not cutting out enjoyment. We are saying go from less enjoyment to better enjoyment. The yogis say the greater knowledge and greater realization is greater joy. We are not going to a world where there is nothing to enjoy, where everything is dull. No, you are touching the source of all joy. I'm looking at it from another angle. So, on this subject, the science of yoga. Yoga is a scientific step-by-step method by which first the distractions of the mind are removed, which takes time because we have lived with distractions all these years. And once the distractions are removed, the yogi is able to go deeper and deeper into the different layers of his consciousness until he reaches the source, which is the true source of himself, because of which I say I, without which I won't be able to say even I. Forget about what I'm doing or not doing, but I as such. So, this is what yoga is all about. And naturally, because we give so much importance to the body, and it is because of the body that I am sitting here and talking to you, therefore yoga starts with the body. Then from the body, when the body is fine-tuned and made proper instrument, then we move to the mind. And then from mind to that which is beyond. Is there something beyond the mind? This has to be found out only through experience. There is no way you can say it is there or it is not there. The yogis say to following a certain kind of sadhana and keeping your body in good shape, good food, proper discipline, neither too much nor too little. You come to a state when the body then reflects a calm mind. And when the mind is calm, that is the takeoff point, the tarmac from which you take off to the higher levels of existence, higher levels of consciousness, till you come to this understanding that everything is pervaded by consciousness. And you're not just a limited little individual. And one more incentive, that it's very blissful. This is yoga. So disassociate all mumbo jumbo from yoga. Take away all superstitions. We don't want anything. We want to find out if there is a way, step by step, by which one can dwell into the recesses of our own consciousness, layer by layer, looking within, until you discover the true essence. This is yoga. And about this yoga, Krishna says to Arjuna in the Gita, yoga is more perfect than even Sankhya. Therefore, Arjuna, become yogi. So, winding up, I would say that therefore yoga is not meant for hermits. Yoga is not meant for people who have just given up the world. Yoga is meant for you and me, people who live in this world, who find that we are still not expanded to our ultimate capacity, and who find ourselves battered by the ups and downs of life and want to maintain a tranquil, equal state of mind. Yoga is for such of us who are here. And as you dwell into it, you will realize what treasures lie deep in the heart. Well, there was one wandering yogi in Jerusalem who said this, lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. Anybody think who this yogi could be? Jesus Christ. So this is the treasure that we seek. And the practice of getting there is the science of yoga. I have to do all this before we begin actually, the methodology. Because without, you see, this is why Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras begins first chapter as Samadhi Pada, which means where are we going? What are we looking for first? What is Samadhi? What is that state that we are looking? And then go into the practice. So from tomorrow we will start slowly looking into the practices step by step. So don't ask me any questions now about the practice. This is exactly what we are going to do tomorrow, the sadhana pada. What practices can be done to reach this? So today's class is over. Thank you. We have a question answer session now. You can raise some questions if you have, and then tomorrow we meet again, I think, no?
Yes, sir.
In the evening, yes. Believe me, before I finish, I enjoy this class because young people have still minds which are not closed, still open. So it's easy to make people understand. Not easy, but at least it's more easier than telling someone who, has got so many ideas in his mind is difficult to separate and go inside. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, sir, we talked about truth yesterday, and today also we talked about it a little bit. So, my question is two parts related. That do only humans have access to the truth, and at what point of time in the evolution, let's say Darwin's theory of evolution, do humans get access to this truth? And even as a normal person, also, when do you get access to this as a child? Also, let's say.
Well, it depends on different people get access to it at different times if they want to access it. Yeah, the capacity to access the truth is there in all human beings. There is no question. But circumstances and situations make it possible for some to begin to access and some not to. Because suppose I'm brought up in a background where I am taught from childhood that there is no such truth, there is no need to access it, then there is no possibility of accessing it. Okay. Now, as far as an animal is concerned, the essence of an animal is also the same consciousness, no doubt. There is no question about that. However, human beings have this peculiar situation where we are able to be aware of it, while the animal is not aware of it. That's the only difference. Perhaps at some point of evolution, the animal may become aware of it. Animals are not non-intelligent, they are very intelligent. Sometimes I look at dogs and think they are better than us in some ways. It's not that. But you don't get access to it. You need to get access to it. You need to first think that you need to access it. And if you are taught from the beginning that we need not access it, then there is no chance of accessing it. So, okay. Yeah, tell me.
Okay, sir. My question was answered, I guess.
Right.
Actually, my question was more from the angle of, for example, if we talk about reproduction, then only when we hit puberty, then we get access to it, right? So is it true do you get access right from the womb of the mother itself, or do you get it later, or what? I mean,
I cannot fully answer this question, but I can only tell you that perhaps from the time the fetus is in the womb, there is the potential of finding it. You may not have actually found, but the potential to find it would certainly be there in all human beings. Yeah. Now what happens is, when you're born and then when you are growing up as a child, the circumstances around you will make you change whether you can access it or you cannot access it, but the potential is very much there. So if you get the right direction at that point in your youth, you might probably go back to this, the potential which you already possess. So now, since I am saying this, that means every human being has the potential to access it. Whether the situations have let you access it or not, that's a different story. The potential is there. So it's very just that way.
okay, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I discuss more?
What the Jesus part again, actually, because
The
his country, Jesus part again, because his contributions are considered very less, actually. So I don't know anything good about
Let me tell you about this. Now, please keep Jesus away from the church for the time being, okay? Now, because why? Church, like any other thing, is an organization. It's interested in certain things. Fair enough. But it has started in the name of someone called Jesus. Right. Now, Jesus was not in Rome, he was in Jerusalem. And if you look at it from the Hindu cultural point of view, or from the ancient system of thought of the Hindus, you see Jesus as a wandering yogi. It's a perfect example of a parivrajak. You know what is a parivrajak? One who's moving all the time, who doesn't have one place to stay. Jesus himself confesses, saying in the Bible that the foxes have dens and the snakes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Typical, a wandering sage. We find such in India also. They are called parivrajakas. So this is now. And some of the teachings are so close to the Buddhist and the Vedantic teachings that it's difficult to separate it out from. Like, for instance, when it is said, lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal, which means there is a treasure in the heart, in the core of my conscience, which we were talking about all this time, which no thief can break in and steal, which is more valuable than anything that you will have. Okay. Now there's another cryptic saying which nobody has been able to explain to me from the mostly from the religious background of Jesus, of the church. Therefore, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Therefore, if your eye is single, your whole body shall be full of light. Does it mean that if I am blind in one eye, my whole body shall be full of light? Or is this man referring to a single eye which the human system possesses, and which, when it is opened, your whole body shall be full of light? What is he talking about? You see, so if you go close, you will see many such things inside. The teaching of forgiveness that Jesus teaches in the gospel is very close to the Buddhist teachings. Bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. And yet, we cannot forget the fact that all the crusades were fought by the Christians. So, a great man said something. It can always be later on interpreted and changed and used according to imperialistic designs. You know what I mean? Even the sayings of rishis can be twisted for that. I want to tell you a story. Apparently, it was told to me by a great man. In the Semitic religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, the split between divine and evil is very strong, in the sense that there is the devil, Satan, and there is God. Two extremes. It's not so much in the Hindu system of thought, because some asuras are good people. Prahalada is supposed to have been an asura. Some devas are very mischievous, like Indra will go and steal somebody's horse and run away, and so on. So the exact split between good and evil is not defined in the Hindu system. Some are good, some are bad, it's accepted. Okay. But in Semitic religions, there is this partition, strict wall between Satan and God. God is all good and Satan is all bad. Now this is a story. Apparently the Satan once went for a walk with his close friend. Story. Not recorded anywhere in history, okay. So Satan went for a walk with his close friend. So while they were walking, they came to a lawn. So Satan bent down and picked up something from the lawn and put it in his pocket. So his friend asked him, what did you pick up just now? Satan said, I just picked up the truth. Truth, T-R-U-T-H in capital letters, which means truth, God, spirit, higher things. And he is the opposite of that. So his friend said, if you have picked up the truth and put it in your pocket, your days are numbered now. You're finished. Because you're the opposite. You're darkness. You're not light. You are untruth. You're not truth. So you picked up the truth and put it in your pocket. You're finished now. Your days are over. Apparently the Satan smiled and patted his friend on his shoulders and said, don't worry, friend. I'll organize it. Did you get anything? Even the truth, when it gets too organized, established, it becomes untruth. I don't know what you get what I'm trying to say. Then it becomes solidified and stratified, and that stratification successfully covers the truth. This is what happens. So even Jesus was a great yogi. Perhaps when Swami Vivekananda was asked if he thought that Jesus was Son of God, he said, if he lived in India, he would have been one of our gods in the pantheon. Why son? Why one step down? See that? So, I think now you have food for thought for your question.
So my question was, why mind has this tendency to fall for things that are hindrance to like realize that truth, and that's why we require step-by-step procedure to like bring mind on that path and then realize the truth.
Why? Why does the mind get distracted and fall away from the truth? Which is why we need to work on how to bring it back. That's your question, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, it is the nature of the mind, all minds, to move towards that which is enjoyable. Yes? Forget philosophy. This is the truth. We all like to find something that is enjoyable. Now, for thousands of years, what we are taught from childhood is that to enjoy, you need to adopt these distractions. Right? Very rarely do somebody instruct the child saying, if you want to find the reality, you need to not get too attracted by these distractions. However, there are teachings come to us from thousands of years which also speak about this. But we tend to neglect that. Why? Because we human beings want shortcut to happiness. When happiness is available in front of me in a glass of scotch, why would I go and search for it in the Supreme Being? Right? So, what happens is the shortcut to happiness becomes our obsession. And there is nobody to tell us, look, this is not all there is something much beyond. This teaching has by and by become very less. So we all fall into this. I must tell you this. There was a family who was very close to a yogi. Very close. And they used to look after him, do everything. Until one day, their son decided to become a yogi. That's all. They cut off the yogi. They cut off that yogi with whom they were so close. Why? Because they thought this guy is going to become a yogi. Now what will happen to his life? Because they did not realize that what you actually seeking is that. So to the question why we are distracted is because that's how society has been teaching us. This is the best thing to do, not go towards that. Now I am saying, in this new generation, you should begin to understand that if you go and find your source, you are not going to miss the world in any way. This is a fear that you will become sannyasins. So even if you talk about it at home, your parents may discourage you. I don't know. Hey, don't get into this. You do your IIT, finish it quickly, and so on. I am saying, okay, do your IIT, finish it, but don't forget that there is something also here, which is your own source. It is not anywhere outside. This is the reason why we get so easily distracted. You know, the usual tendency is to have a shortcut to happiness. Now, this seems long, winding, and so who would want to try to get into all this? But we who have done it are saying that it is worth it. And it will not interfere with your life. Well, sometimes for going deep into spiritual practices, you might have to, for some time, retire into a quiet place, practice. But everybody does that. Even industrialists, they work hard for 9 months. They may retire for a month and go to a resort and stay there and enjoy. Why? Because they want to be free. So, my whole life has been to tell people that you're not losing anything in this life by trying to find out your spiritual essence. They can go side by side. I'm a married man, I have 2 children, I had to bring them up from so difficult. You all know that teenage is a very difficult time to handle, right? But we have gone through all that. Today they are grown up and gone, okay. And yet, I did not miss my yogic search, right? If I could do it, you could do it. And I find I might have found it even more difficult because I came from a background where nobody talked about yoga or meditation or anything of the kind. How did I do it? So it's an interest that you have to generate yourself. I hope
Thank you, Guru.
And since we are on the subject and your middle name is Gyaneshwar, Sant Gyaneshwar attained the highest level of spiritual practice and went into retirement at the age of, I think, 16 or 17.
21.
21, yeah, you know better. 21. By that 21, he had finished everything. And he said, now it is time to go. See what a royal way of going. He said, now I'm done. My time is up. So build a place for me. Went and sat there like this and did and gone. How? Here we are afraid of death. Okay. So then we'll meet tomorrow then. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's coming up nice. I like it.